Okay, so I think I'll just wait one more minute and then we'll get started. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's panel, Against the Odds, Inspiring Women. Excelling in any profession requires incredible dedication and resilience, yet there's often another layer of complexity for women. According to Gapminder, around 18% of companies worldwide have female top managers, and only around 25% of seats in national parliaments are headed by women. In the Gapminder quiz that the public can take, between 80 to 90% of people guess these numbers wrong. They guess a lot lower, often around 2 to 5% instead, indicating that we still don't actually recognize female achievements in generally male-dominated fields. The four women joining us today have faced personal and professional challenges, going against the odds to achieve incredible prestige in their respective fields. My name is Kate Grossenbacher. I am a grade 12 student at the International School of Geneva, who has been part of the YFS team for 3 years, and I will be moderating this panel today. Our panel will be 45 minutes long, with roughly 30 minutes of a moderated panel discussion, and then about 15 minutes of audience Q&A, which will be facilitated by Mentimeter. The code should now appear on your screen. It's 9057-7426, and that way you can submit questions to us throughout the panel. And you can also ask a specific speaker a question and say who the question is from. So now, without further ado, I would like to invite our esteemed panelists to introduce themselves, starting with Eleanor Polly. Eleanor?
Hi, welcome to you all. Thank you so much for the introduction. My name is Eleanor Polly. I'm a PhD student, my third year in material science and engineering at the University of Cambridge. I'm a Swiss engineer, an analog astronaut, and was the commander for the Swiss-based analog space mission Asclepios-1. Look forward to discussing with you today.
Thank you so much. Janet?
Hi, thanks Youth Forum Switzerland for having me here today and for the opportunity to share with you key messages I hope will benefit you. I am originally from the US with a background, I'm Vietnamese American. My background is in technology, working in the industry, in the aerospace industry, technology consulting, and today I'm a principal programmer of Microsoft. I also I'm the founder and executive director for Thriving Elements, a nonprofit STEM mentoring program for underserved, underrepresented girls who are interested in the STEM, or what we call here the MINT field. They're hopefully some of the audience members are mentees of the program, and also an author of the upcoming book, Boldly You. Hopefully I'll get to talk to you more about it. A story about discovering what you're capable of when you show up for yourself. So looking forward to this session.
Thank you so much. Should we move on to Margot?
Perfect. Yeah, echoing again, thanks so much for having us. So excited for this discussion today. I'm Margot Camus, and I am a global brand communications lead at Adidas. And have a background in sustainable fashion, and also I'm a World Economic Forum global shaper as well, based in Germany.
Oh, that's really interesting. And then finally, our last panelist is Silke.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me. So I'm actually I was a student at ISADL from the class of 2018. And currently I'm an athlete, so I went to the Olympics this year and I won a bronze medal at the U23 European Championships. And I look forward to discussing this topic about women, especially with these other three very inspiring women.
Thank you guys all for introducing yourselves, and you have incredible stories already, and I'm excited to hear about them a little bit more. So why don't we start with Janet? What would you consider to be your greatest professional achievement so far?
My greatest professional achievement, I think, is getting to the point where I'm able to do something that's bigger than myself and the people around me, and which is being so inspired by my mentors in navigating me into the technology field and through the technology field throughout my career, that I was able to then turn around and start Thriving Elements, the STEM mentoring nonprofit.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I would love to talk about Thriving Elements a little bit more later. But maybe we can move on to Eleanor, because Eleanor, you work in a similar sort of field. What do you think has been the most difficult part of your professional achievement so far?
I think it was to never give up. It's always, like when you have adversity, sometimes you might think, oh, well, I'm gonna give this up. And, there's lots of studies sometimes about understanding what path you can take, what is the right path. This is something, especially when you're quite young at the beginning, like you don't really know how you're going to get where you want to get. I personally want to become an astronaut, and there's no easy way. There's no specific school. Like, it's once you've selected, then you get trained. But until you get there, there's a lot of steps, and there's not one right way. So this is the most difficult, is like to keep going on even when you fail, and to just try and find the path that suits you. But it's obviously what also makes it really, really interesting is that there's no easy answer. It makes life really, really beautiful and interesting.
Yeah, definitely. So Margot, I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about, do you think that there has been a role of gender in making it a challenge for you to excel in your field, or do you think that it hasn't really played a part in your professional and personal growth?
I think it's a really great question. I was reflecting upon this question, and I realized that earlier on in my career, I definitely did encounter issues where I think maybe I was, spoken over, or I was in a meeting and I was the youngest female. So I was automatically allocated things like the coffee run or taking notes. So I definitely think that played a fact and a role in my career and having to experience these situations. But I think as I've gotten older and more experienced, I tend to gravitate to companies and projects and teams where it's not an issue and they have really great balance and they really prioritize equality. So I don't face that now at all, but I definitely have in the past. And I think it's a good lesson to make a conscious effort to work with companies or align yourself to brands that do care about the same things, whether it's gender issues, sustainability, and other important topics to you.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think it's also interesting to see that you have to sort of make that personal decision to prioritize your values, especially when you're trying to, achieve your goals. And Eleanor, I saw that as Margot was talking, you were nodding your head quite a bit. Do you think that gender has also played a role in excelling in your field, or has it not really been a challenge for you?
So I'm an engineer, and sadly, we still have a lower proportion of women to men. I've studied math physics when I was in high school, so I was always used to this ratio. I do lots of sports, so I've been in a rather male environment, and for me, it didn't really matter. The only time it matters is if, maybe somebody comes in your room, and I've got airplanes in my room, models and like posters everywhere because I worked on them and I love them. And people are like, oh, this is a boys' room. And then when you're having exams and you've been working really hard for years and you say, oh, I'm tired, and someone jokingly says, why don't you just marry a rich guy? And you're like, I never got a word of support, but I do get those jokes. And this is where it gets hard. I never had massive adversity where somebody closed the door on me saying, you're a woman, because I was extremely strong-minded, I'm also quite tall, so it was useful. But it's more when you keep persisting and you're already doing something hard and you're not getting any support. Instead, you're getting those meaningless, stupid comments or jokes that in the end, they're not really funny. They just erode you, and it just shows that people are still, they still need to evolve quite a bit, at least in their mindset. So it hasn't played in the everyday thing of getting the right support that you need.
Yeah, that's really interesting to talk about. Like, it's the small things that make a big difference. But so let's turn to Silke now, because we haven't heard you speak yet. How did you feel? Like, how was the personal challenge? Because you're an athlete, and athlete, it's like split into female and men. How was it overcoming gender challenges, or were gender challenges not really a role for you? And were people, so this is a very long question, but were people quite, speaking to Margaret's point, were people very dismissive of you and your goals because you wanted to be an athlete, and a female athlete in particular? Would you mind speaking to that?
Well, firstly, it relates a lot to what Margot said, in the fact that I'm surrounded by a really good team. So a team that really supports me, that understands me. Like my trainer, for example, he notices when I come to training and I have a really bad day, he notices from the get-go that I'm having a really bad day. So I think that's really important, to have a really good team. But I know of like other athletes who don't have that, and then especially a woman, you feel uncomfortable if for example you have a male trainer or like male athletes around you, you feel uncomfortable talking about why you might feel like down, or you might have your menstruation, for example, that plays a big part in sports as well for females. They might not feel comfortable talking about it, and it can have a huge impact on training as well, and on your results in training, but also in competition. So I think that's really important, to have a really good team around you that understands you and is very supportive.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, because it also extends past gender, is that just having support around you. And this brings me to my next point. Janet, you mentioned something about mentorship and how mentorship, and you work as a mentor, often supporting mentees in STEM fields. How do you think mentorship has helped you achieve your goals? And do you think that mentorship can help other people achieve theirs as well? Do you think it's an effective way to support people?
Yes, well, absolutely. I started a whole program on mentoring, and then also did a TED Talk the year prior to Eleanor's TED Talk on mentoring here in Zurich. And so with mentoring, for me, my parents were refugees from Vietnam into the US. So it was very difficult for them to navigate me through the American education and professional system. And so having mentors, and even while I was in high school, I didn't know what they were at the time, but having mentors really helped me figure out how to get scholarships, how to even navigate a college application. And in the US, it's really expensive to pay for school. So saving money and working. I was working at KFC for 7.5 years throughout high school and throughout college, and doing all these things, knowing that I had mentors along the way to help me, really empowered me. And having a key mentor also in university helped push me to pursue the information systems field at the time, where it was quite new. And I remember he told me, "Hey, Janet, you seem to be very enthusiastic and energetic about the work that we do in this information systems class. I run my own tech consulting firm, and if you look into pursuing a degree in information systems, then the world is going to be your oyster, I promise you, because there are just not enough women in the field, and we need more diversity to make technology products better." So do I feel like in the future it will help, having mentors will help? I think absolutely. I think there needs to be the right structure put in place. I think there's a huge lack of education on what mentoring is and how to navigate it. And that's the work that I do in addition to my professional career, is just really providing guidance and examples on how people can write emails, how people can reach out, how people can follow up with their potential mentors. And hopefully you all here listening can tap into that, those resources, so that you can get your own mentors and spread the word once you are comfortable with it.
That's really great that like you have somebody to support you along the way. And I think it does impact people. If anyone has somebody in their lives that really guides them and pushes them to do something they hadn't thought was possible, it does leave an impact. Margot, because you're in the business field, you primarily work in business. How has mentorship played a role in your field? And would you consider mentoring somebody else? Is that something you intend to do? Could you speak a little bit more on that?
Yeah, of course. I've been so fortunate as well as Janet, coming from a migrant background. You know, my family and I migrated to Australia when I was little. and had amazing mentors throughout, also navigating the Australian system, going to university, doing internships, and then moving. I had an amazing mentor that inspired me to move to London, and now I'm in Germany. So, and also for many, many years, I've mentored as well, because I know how beneficial it has been. So I would highly encourage people to get involved either as a mentee or a mentor, because it's been super life-changing for me. And I also think like mentoring doesn't have to be so formal, like once a week for a year, and it's like, very formal, I suppose. But it can also be like, hey, I want to learn more about a specific topic, or I'm really interested in expanding my skill set in this area. And then actually just reaching out to people that you look up to, and maybe just having a coffee with them and learning. So I think also don't be afraid of reaching out to others. You might get people that say no, or they don't have the time, but also a lot of people are very willing to give back, even if it's a coffee, even if it's a few sessions to develop your skills on something. So I definitely would encourage everyone listening to really think about where can they grow and how can people in their community support them.
Yeah, that's actually really good advice for people who are looking to do something similar in the future. Silke, I was wondering if you could maybe describe for us a moment that really impacted you in your professional career and your professional development, either a negative or a positive remark, just one like sort of single moment that just changed your outlook on what you wanted to do.
Wanted to do in terms of what?
Just being an athlete, or inspired you to go move forward with being an athlete, or in terms of something else that you've done. Has there been a specific moment that kind of just inspired you to keep going, or not?
No, it's a good question. I think especially this year at the Under-23 European Championships was definitely a special moment for me, because the whole season I was not performing the way I could, or I knew I could. And I had this blockage in my head that I was trying to overcome, but it was really hard. And I started losing self-confidence because of it as well. And I think I just said, okay, I'm just going to go to these championships and just let go, just be happy, just run, like I'm just going to enjoy it. And that triggered it for me. And I ran so well in the championships. I ran almost a PB by more than a second. And then I got the bronze medal. So it was overwhelming for me. And it was a moment where I realized I just need to do what I love. And I mean, the stress, it's all in your head, and it's mentally, it's really hard if you have self-doubt, and you just need to start believing in yourself. And that kind of changed my outlook on self-belief, that I need to believe into myself more, and I shouldn't doubt myself because something isn't going the way I want it to.
That's some really nice advice, and I think it's interesting to see how people who are very successful can still experience those blockages that we all sort of feel. I was wondering if maybe we could change course a little bit and maybe go to Eleanor. So I was doing a bit of research about STEM, and in Canada and the US in particular, there was a big push for STEM, and in particular women in STEM in the 90s and early 2000s. Do you think that we should be encouraging a specific gender to take part in STEM, or do you think that that's maybe not very successful or won't result in very much? I was just wondering your opinion on that.
So I can give you first-hand experience on this. When I was 15, I started doing robotics classes, and I became a robotics assistant and then a robotics teacher. And we were teaching kids between 8 till 14 years old to learn how to do robotics with Lego bricks and Lego WeDo and Lego Mindstorms. And we were encouraging females to come, and we were getting grants and allowing those holidays and camps to happen only if we had a certain number of females. And it was great because we were like pushing for it to happen. But the problem was that sometimes we had to tell some little boys that they couldn't come because some of the camps were female only, and we were not fully booked, but we were booked years before for the others where it was male. And that really broke my heart, because I was like, as much as we have to push and it's great, I feel that we're more efficient when we have those mixed sex camp, because to me we are not going to solve the problem by creating inequalities on the other side. You need also to mix them. You need to make them understand, look, biologically, there are some differences. Obviously, some of them have like ovaries, some have like testicles, some have both. There's also, you know, hermaphrodite people. But in the end, it's just do whatever you like, regardless of your gender. And by telling the little boys, you can't come because it's for girls only, it felt weird. And I knew it was a way to, you know, kind of push the other direction and try to improve. But I felt it was too much. And I felt really in conflict because we were only getting those grants if we had, you know, enough girls. And I think that now you can really see that the wheel is spinning with gathering momentum. So the change is coming, and every change takes time, but we're getting there. So we don't need to create this extreme like overboard of you know, only women anymore. If obviously you need to be inclusive, yes, sure. Like for example, I was in a college that was women only at Lucy Cavendish College in Cambridge, and now there's no need for a women only college, so they've moved it and they open it to women and men. So you can already see that we don't need this anymore, and it's just about a matter of free choice. And yeah, obviously countries where you don't have a choice for women, you have to open it, but then the balance will make it itself. If there's a bit more women or a bit men, it doesn't matter, as long as they have this choice and it's not, you know, because of social needs or demands or traditions, basically.
That's actually a really interesting perspective, you know, that you don't actually hear a lot in sort of the media and the news. I was wondering if any of the other panelists would like to respond either with a similar opinion or a differing opinion. Janet, go ahead.
Yes, I work in this space. So, and the reason why I started Thriving Elements is because I saw the gender disparity in these fields. It's just real. And it's not, I thought it was only in the US until I started working globally across Europe, Asia Pacific, and in Africa. And I think that we do need to continue encouraging and providing guidance and resources and opportunities and access for women to explore these fields, and we needed to do it early on. I think that we also include the boys, young men, and men at the table. For example, with Thriving Elements, our program is targeted towards underserved, underrepresented girls. However, there are boys who have applied and they get rated during the application and recruitment process the same exact way that the other female applicants do. And in fact, in Switzerland, we did have some male applicants, and we do have a young man who is in our program. And the reason that's important for us, because we need the guys to be at the table. We say, hey, yeah, you can be part of this girls mentoring club, but know that we are going to be talking about women empowerment and the challenges that we go through. And so we've done this in the US for quite a few years, 6 years now. And the first couple of boys that we did let in during high school, now they're in university studying engineering, and they have come back to me and said, you know, I never would have noticed that there are so few young women in my classes, and I notice it because of the conversations that we always have during our quarterly leadership team building events. And because of this, I'm going to make sure that, you know, I reach out to the girls and help them and just provide guidance if they need the help, and to be part of this conversation. So I really agree with Eleanor that to not have just girl-oriented or women-oriented events. And I see that happen all too often, where it's like, oh, a women in tech event and no men allowed. And it's just, you're never going to get this collaboration if you don't have them at the table to have the conversation.
Thank you guys both for that really interesting perspective, because I know that definitely I was of the opinion for a very long time that it should only be girls, and girls should definitely, you know, be encouraged, and we shouldn't have men there because they've had privileges. But I think it is interesting that we need to encourage these discussions across the gender divide in order to have real growth and to close that gender disparity in a lot of different work fields. So just again, changing topics a little bit, Silke, I was wondering if you could talk about how do you use your success to better the world? Because you're a Swiss athlete and you do a lot, and you have a lot of high profile events. You're at the Olympics. How do you use your success to better the world and encourage others to do better as well?
Well, for me as an athlete, I mainly contribute to like the world through the platform that I get, and so the platform for my success, I really want to communicate to the people that I can reach what I feel passionate about, and share the view to the rest of the world. So for example, giving an example, I get sponsored by Adidas now. So the stuff that Margot is working with. And I know that Adidas is a very sustainable brand, especially in the last few years. It's very important topic for Adidas to be sustainable. And it's something that I'm very passionate about as well. So, and then there's also a washing machine company called Schultes, for example, that also sponsors me, which is also very sustainable. So I try to link my personal life and my actions to what I personally feel about is really important, so that the people get to see that and see that I'm trying to make a difference, and as being a role model for other young people, especially women, I hope to make sure that they see that I'm trying something to change the world, and that they maybe feel motivated or inspired to do the same thing as well.
That's really great. And I actually didn't know that you worked with Margot. So Margot, how do you also use your values to better the world, and how does that come through in your work?
Yeah, I think for me, it's really important to work for brands and with people that are like-minded. Of course, I really value when people see things differently and they challenge me to, think differently. And I think that's something really important to mention, that with like extra diversity comes more conflict, but conflict is a good thing. That's why, we achieve better outcomes. People are more challenged, and you want to be surrounded by people who also think differently. But in terms of values and in terms of things that are important to me, I really am passionate about mentoring, about giving back, about working on projects at Adidas currently that are sustainability driven, or are, with a collaboration partner that has similar values and is like a female-led team doing something really inspirational, or perhaps something cultural that's really interesting, raising profiles of up-and-coming designers. So I think that's how that's a priority that I place, but obviously it's taken a long time in my career to be able to turn down projects that don't align with my personal values and beliefs, and be lucky enough to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's really great. That's really interesting, and I'm really happy to hear that both you and Silke are using your success in order to really make an impact on the world. So just to kind of have a last question, maybe I'll ask Janet. So what advice would you give to young women who are aspiring to achieve something in their fields?
I love this question, and I will take one of the lessons from the book Boldly You. The one thing that with this group here, who you guys are the future global changers, and the whole vision of YFS is to connect people to these changers. So you have now us, that you're connected to us. And the one basic concept that I'm going to share with you is, whenever you hear no, think of it as that it's standing for new opportunity. So many times we try to make change. People will tell us that it's going to take a long time, or that it's really hard, or that the policy doesn't allow for it, or the rules, or even the legal system. But in order for you to make the change that you want to make, that's bigger than yourself, then you have to be okay with someone telling you no and continue to challenge them. So think of no as new opportunity. And like Eleanor said earlier, don't let your failures stop you from doing something, and you have to just keep pushing forward.
Definitely, and I think that that's some great advice for our audience listening. And just to close off the panel, Eleanor, I know you gave some great advice at the very beginning. Do you have any last words of wisdom for us before we go into the audience Q&A?
I think Janet summarized it, but do what you love what you do, and never stop pushing for what you believe in. Never, ever give up.
And I think that's a lovely place to end this part of the panel discussion. I will now put up the Menti slide again so people can ask some questions. Thank you to the people who have already submitted their questions. Just a quick reminder, the code is 90577426. And yeah, you feel free to submit your questions. I'll leave that up there for a quick moment. But so we can actually start with a question that's already been submitted. Perhaps, so I'll just pull down the screen now so that I can access the question. For any of the panelists, do you ever feel guilty when being more assertive in professional environments? If so, how do you deal with this? So would anyone like to start? Why don't we start with Eleanor? Yeah.
I'm extremely assertive. I'm extremely direct. I don't think it's a gender thing. I think it's just a personality thing. And I know sometimes people confuse women who are very assertive with bossy, but I think it's absolute. And you should be assertive. Obviously, you have to be empathetic. You can't just walk on other people. There are boundaries. But if you want something and you want something, communicate it clearly, show what you're ready to do to get there, and express yourself. Nobody can guess what you want, and nobody is here to hold your hand. You have to take decisions. You are your own master, and you are your own future. Okay, so this is where you have to be assertive, just because it is what it is, and nobody can blame you for this. And if they do, they're not the right person to be working with.
I absolutely agree with Eleanor, and I can't stress it enough, especially being here in Switzerland. There's a huge difference between how we were raised in the US and how what I've been told people are raised in Switzerland, or the culture. Many of you are international students, so it may be different, but in Switzerland, where everyone wants to just blend in and not shake up the workplace, or make people feel uncomfortable. And in the US, we're taught to really, hey, speak up. And I think in order for you all here to do what you do and make change in this world, you will have to speak up, and you will have to make other people feel uncomfortable, and you shouldn't have to feel guilty because of it.
I think that's really, oh, sorry, Margot, go on.
I just wanted to add, like, I echo all of those thoughts, and I think it's worthwhile bringing up something called imposter syndrome, which I really struggle with. I think because the Australian way is very similar to the Swiss way, where it's like, don't shake the boat too much, don't ruffle feathers. But something really important that I've worked through mentoring as well, and also through like celebrating the wins. So every time I achieve a goal, or I do something that I set out to do, or I'm really proud of a campaign that I've launched, I really take the time to celebrate that and acknowledge, like, I worked really hard and I delivered something amazing, and that's something that I should be proud of, and I should be able to speak about without feeling like, what am I doing here? Or why have they invited me to speak on this panel? I'm not as amazing as everyone else. And really tackling that, because I think it's so important to acknowledge that early on and have the confidence to surpass that, and know that it's a thing that many, many women tackle all the time.
Definitely, and yeah, imposter syndrome is a very real thing, even if you don't experience it as much as other people. Silke, would you like to add anything to that, or do you feel guilty when you ask for things and try to talk about your achievements?
Well, I think that the other three women have basically said all that needs to be said, and think I sometimes had the problem in the past, but I think with this year I've learned to celebrate myself and not feel guilty or anything, or feel like I have to like keep myself, like hide it inside of myself and not celebrate myself enough for the achievements that I've done. I think it's really important.
Definitely. So another question from the audience that I thought was really interesting was, what would you say to those who may doubt that gender inequality exists in 2022? Can you share an example of an experience you had? Would anyone like to start with this one? It was just for the panel. Perhaps we could go with Margot. What would you say to somebody who doubts that gender inequality exists in 2022?
I would say, I mean, I personally don't work in tech. I work with tech teams. I would say just walk around like a tech office for a day and just observe some of the conversations that are happening, not just tech, but also finance, engineering. There's lots of industries where, you know, you can look at the reports and they're there and the data's there, but like just go in and walk around and experience it through an internship, through having conversations with these people. And I think you will see very clearly that it is a problem. And it's past just the reports and the insights, but actually talking to people and understanding their experiences where it becomes really deep and where, unfortunately, some people face experiences that are really awful and you just can't believe it's still happening today in the 21st century.
Definitely, yeah. So this is a question that was actually directed to Janet. What has been the biggest challenge with your mentoring program and how have you sort of overcome that? And maybe you can talk about your book as well at the same time.
Yeah, happy to share about both. Many challenges with the mentoring program. One, they have a founder, myself, who when I started in 2016, then got asked to work on a project in Switzerland. So then I've been managing a US driven program from Switzerland for most of its life, and then expanding it in Switzerland and in Botswana. The biggest challenge here in Switzerland is being able to get mentors. I don't know why that is. We have a lot of mentors who have gone through the whole application interview process to be selected as a mentor. But here, I don't know what it is. So if you know of people who would be great mentors, please let me know, because we do have a lot of Swiss students here in Switzerland who have signed up to be mentees. The other big challenge is we're operating off of just volunteers. And so we don't have funding to even hire a full-time person. So we have to have at least 20 volunteers, if not more, all across the world who are helping to run the back-end operations of Thriving Elements, in addition to their everyday life, their professional career, managing their family, their friends, their personal life, their mental health. So that I'm thankful for, because I'm very convinced about our vision and our mission. Our mission is to create access and opportunities for the girls in underserved and underrepresented communities to get into the STEM field. And it's just very simple. This is what we do, but to get the funding for it, that's a whole nother thing. So those were some of the challenges for the mentoring program. And yeah, happy to talk a bit more about the book. So because of Thriving Elements, I've been asked to speak across various stages and across various ages of audience, from high school all the way to professionals well in their career. And I've shared my story, and you can hear a bit of it if you check out the TED Talk, the TEDx Zurich from last year. And I never thought that sharing my story, I thought my story was very normal, and it was the challenges that I went through wasn't worth telling, until I started telling it more and more. And because people ask, how are you possibly running Thriving Elements when you have your global tech consulting career, you're flying all over the place, and how do you manage all of that? And so I just tell people, you know, it was very hard for me growing up, and I want to make it a lot easier for the next generation of girls who are in challenging situations similar to me. So that's why the book has been written, and I actually have it here. This is just like a draft copy. which is so crazy that it's even happening. But yes, so a story about discovering what you're capable of when you show up for yourself. And that's distilled down into 5 key thriving elements on what you can do to discover what you're capable of.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to reading it. It's already out, or is it coming? It's coming out soon.
It's coming out in May. This is just the advanced
May.
reader copy that we send to like media and bookstores and whatnot. But yeah.
Well, amazing. I'm very much looking forward to reading it, and I hope everyone else in the audience will be watching for it in our bookshelves in May 2022. So Eleanor, you also did mentoring as well, correct, from the panel? Did you experience similar challenges to Janet when you were mentoring, or were they quite different?
So I don't have my own like mentoring society, so it's quite difficult. Obviously, with the Global Shapers, sometimes I have a mentee for a few weeks, you know. So I don't really have an official role as mentor. But the past 2 years, I've had lots of people coming to me, for example, on LinkedIn or by email, or even friends asking, look, I want to do this. Actually was on a phone call on Sunday. One guy wanted to apply to my analog space mission. I didn't know him. And I was like, when's your deadline? He was like, oh, tonight. I was like, okay, let's get on a phone call and I'm gonna talk you through it and then we're gonna see it. Because as Janet say, I want to give this opportunity to others, you know, like if you do something really amazing and you like it, you want others to be able to do it too. It's sometimes with mentorship, what you have to be careful with is to understand that people are different from you. I have extremely high energy, I'm hyperactive, I'm interested in everything, and I'm ready to make lots of sacrifices. And a lot of people are actually not ready to do that, or they're not like you. And they think they want the same thing as you do, but they don't really. And sometimes it's difficult to not project your own expectation on them, because then they might feel that you feel that you didn't do enough, and it could. So this is the only, I think, difficult thing if you don't have obviously the problems of you know, having a how you say no funds for, you know, mentorship. It's be careful not to project, but you will always find amazing mentors. I had so many teachers in Switzerland actually that were, I'm gonna give you their names, Janet, if you want, but they were not mentors per se, the official post. It was just, they were inspiring people who were often teachers or collaborators. And I was like, well, you know, I love talking to them, and I take things from them all the time, as in I learn from them every day and I get inspired and we exchange and you grow together that way. So look around you. There's always somebody inspiring, and they can be younger than you, they can be older than you, they can be any gender. It's just about opening your eyes and seeing who's incredible around you. There's so many of them.
Thank you so much. And I think that the audience will really appreciate, you know, that insight into mentorship from both you and Janet. So Silke, I was wondering if you could talk about whether or not you've experienced gender pay gap in your field, and what can we do to eliminate it? Because there was a scandal, you know, a while ago with the US Olympic team where the women athletes were getting paid a lot less than the men athletes. Have you experienced that, or is that not really an issue?
Well, for me, I probably don't get paid as much as top athletes, but I have some income right now at the moment from sports, but I don't really have the figures to compare what I would get if I was a male athlete, because it depends on the results that you bring. But I mean, I can't go to another teammate and ask like, how much money do you get? Like, that's not necessarily an open topic. I think that from sponsors and the federation, that there's not really, in Switzerland especially, I don't know about the other European countries or around the world, that there's not really a gap in the money that we get, because on results in sports, especially those that are individual, they are all based on the times that you run or the results that you get. So there are specific criteria that you need to get to get those payments. So I think there, for me personally, it's not as significant as in other sports, for example, like football or something that is a team sport. I mean, male football is much more watched than female football because it's seen as a male sport, which shouldn't be the case. So I think for athletics, it's a bit better than other sports, and because the criteria are more distinct, and there are a lot of female athletes as well as male athletes.
Yeah, and thank you for talking about that issue. It is quite difficult to talk about, but money sometimes you don't always know the answers. But I think it's really interesting to see insight into not all sports are super divided by gender, and it's not maybe a prominent thing. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. Thank you to everyone for tuning in and for sending your questions. We had a couple more that we didn't get to. And thank you to our incredible speakers for answering them and providing insight into their knowledge, experience, and ideas. And I think I've definitely taken a lot away from this session, and I hope you all have too. A quick reminder to all ISL students that you must remain in your lesson 6 classrooms, and to everybody else, I hope you have a great rest of your day and enjoy the weekend, not the long weekend. We wish.
Yes. Thank you very much for the opportunity.